So in this video, I am going to be breaking down how we actually calculate the return on investment for our AI implementations. Now we use what I call a discovery first ROI framework, and it really does depend on the client and the industry that we are working with at the time. But this approach, it is relatively consistent across all of our successful projects. Now, the reason that we actually developed this systematic approach, it's because we have realized early on that most AI agencies are pretty terrible at demonstrating real business value, where they will be showing you any fancy demos and talking about efficiency gains. But when you actually ask them, like, how much money will this actually save or even make me, they can really only give vague answers. So we've been forced to get really good at this because our clients, they're paying us anywhere from, a few $1,000s to $25,000 to $80,000 for all these implementations. And at that price point, I mean, you better be able to actually show concrete return on investments with real numbers. So these are essentially the 5 main phases to our approach. So we have the discovery and the process mapping, though I should mention that we do not always do full organizational discovery. Sometimes if a client already knows exactly like what they want to automate, we will skip just straight to an exploration phase, as we call it instead. So the discovery audit, it's just for when they don't know really like what to prioritize within their operation. They don't know where to start with AI and automation, and like we need to be mapping out their entire operation. And exploration, this is just essentially for when they already know what process that they want automated, and we just need to validate the technical feasibility. But in both cases, we are doing current state cost analysis, time tracking. We are also doing workflow documentation, KPI baseline establishment, success metrics, definition, and ROI calculation framework. Then from there, we just do revenue impact assessment and then technical exploration and the actual ROI calculations with the projections. Now, the last piece, this is going to be validation. Like, how do we know if the system is actually delivering what we are promising? So to best elaborate and explain how we actually do this, I'm going to be using a case study of a property management company that we have worked with in the past year. So we do have to keep them anonymous, obviously, just because of NDAs, but this was about an $81,000 project we completed about last year. It was a mid-sized firm. They had about 400 residential units across multiple markets. They had 12 employees total, generating about 2.8 million in annual revenue. Now, this client, they came to us pretty typical of what we normally see. So they knew that they needed AI and automation in some sorts, where they were essentially just drowning in manual processes, but they had just no idea where to start or what to prioritize, where they had tried some basic Zapier stuff, nothing really systematic. And what made this perfect for our framework is that they had real business pains that were actually costing them actual money. And they had the budgets to invest in these solutions, and leadership that understood that they needed to transform their operations to actually keep growing. And this is something that a lot of agencies really take for granted, is having these forward thinkers who are actually willing to take that leap and take that risk with AI. All right, so phase 1, this is just comprehensive discovery. And look, I know discovery, it sounds really boring, but this is where we actually separate ourselves from pretty much every other AI agency out there, where most agencies, they ask like, what do you want to automate? Whereas we ask like, how does your business actually work? Now, the property management company, they thought that their biggest problem, it was tenant communication, where they were getting overwhelmed with emails and phone calls. But when we actually mapped out their processes, we had discovered that their real problem was lead management, where they were losing about 30% of their leads just because of slow response times, where they were averaging about 3 to 4 hours to respond when leads expected immediate responses. And this is actually some low-hanging fruit and what we've actually automated for a lot of other companies, but it's actually a bit irrelevant. Anyways, so our discovery process, it involves stakeholder interviews with everybody who touches the processes that we might be automating, not just the CEO or just leaders, but the property management, the real estate agents, the property managers, the leasing agents, the maintenance coordinators, admin staff, all that. So we spend about 30 to 45 minutes with each person, just understanding their daily workflows and what's going in and what's coming out from it. And the key from this is that like we don't just ask what they do. We have to ask them to actually walk us through yesterday. So for example, like we would say like yesterday morning when you actually arrived in the office, what did you do first? What happened after? What happened after that? Because these people and the staff, like they will tell you what they think they do, but when you actually ask them about yesterday, they tell you what they actually do. And this is what we're really trying to get into. So for this property management client, we just discovered that they had 6 different lead sources. So their website, Zillow, apartments.com, referrals, walk-ins, investor referrals. They were all going to completely different places. And this is a pretty common theme in most operations where I'm just going to be using some random names. Like their lead guy, Marcus, he was spending 45 minutes every morning just collecting leads from all these different sources, but they had no qualification system whatsoever. And the agents that would call everyone who inquired and they would just hope for the best, honestly. And I'm talking about spending an hour on the phone with someone who cannot afford their cheapest unit. Now, their follow-up process, it was completely random, to say the least. They had maybe a call or two that they were following up with. Well, not that low, actually. But they would get out their emails, do the best that they could, but there was so much that was slipping through the cracks that they just give up and move on to the next lead more easily than they should have. So we document all of this. We map out every single step, every handoff, every place where things break down or just get delayed. Now, phase 2, this is where we actually put a dollar amount on everything that we have discovered with them. So this is the current state cost analysis, as we call it. And most people, they drastically underestimate what their current processes are actually costing them. So the first thing that we do is we calculate the direct labor costs. Now, for the property management, Marcus, I'm just going to use this fake name again. Marcus was spending about 45 minutes daily just collecting these leads. So that is about 4 hours weekly at $32 per hour. So $128 weekly or $6,656 annually just on lead collection. But then he was also spending another 16 hours per week on lead management, qualification, and follow-up activities at $32 per hour. So that same hourly rate. And that is $512 weekly or $26,624 annually. Now, there are 3 property managers. We found they were each spending about 15 hours weekly answering the same tenant questions over and over again. Rent payment instructions, maintenance request procedures, lease renewal questions, stuff that honestly could be answered with templates or just very simple automations. And that is 45 total hours weekly at $28 per hour. So $1,260 weekly or $65,520 annually. Now, their maintenance coordinator, I'm going to call him Tommy. So maintenance coordinator Tommy, he was spending about 12 hours every single week just coordinating these repair requests, where he was calling these vendors, checking the availability, and coordinating all the schedules. So for him, that was about $35 per hour, so $420 weekly or $21,840 annually. Plus, we noticed various admin tasks across all 3 different processes, totaling 10 hours weekly at $25 per hour, which is $250 weekly or just $13,000 annually. So our total direct labor costs, this was $6,656 if we add the $26,624, $65,520, $21,840 plus the $13,000. That is about $133,640 annually. But here's what most agencies also miss, is that we are also calculating hidden costs and the inefficiencies. So what are the real costs of slow response times? Like, what does it cost when property managers are doing any administrative work instead of any of their strategic work? So we had actually identified several hidden cost components. The error correction cost when miscategorized maintenance requests, it required some rework for them. And this was about 6 hours, and at $30 per hour weekly, this equals about $9,000, $360 annually. Now, the management oversight time spent managing these inefficient processes, it equated to about 4 hours weekly at $50 per hour, equaling $10,400 annually. The opportunity costs, where skilled property managers are just doing any admin work instead of their strategic tenant relationship management, we estimated this at $6,968 annually in the lost productivity. So the total hidden cost, it comes out to be about $26,728 annually. The combined current state costs $133,640 plus $26,728. This comes out to be $160,368 annually. So let's get into the actual revenue impact of this. So this is essentially our phase 3. Now, phase 3, this is, as you probably tell, this is where we assess the broader revenue impact just beyond the cost savings for them. And this is where the big numbers usually are coming from. So for the property management company, we actually identified several different impact opportunities. And when we're working with bigger operations, mid to large size operations, even smaller operations, we can identify up to like 15 different really solid paths to be going down. So it's just a matter of prioritization at that point. But again, like for the property management company, we identified just several revenue opportunities. So first, it was lead conversion improvement. So for the lead response, obviously industry data, I mean, you don't even have to do the data to know this, but it was showing us that the response time directly impacts the conversion rates. And we already knew this at the time, but a lot of the time when we're trying to close these deals, it's a matter of just presenting these information to the clients to make them understand their pain points a little bit further, really amplify their pain points. And it's really not even amplifying them. It's just making them more known. But they were averaging about 3 to 4 hours to respond to the leads. Now, everyone should know this. It's pretty logical when you just think about it. Companies that respond within 1 minute, we found that they have 391% higher conversion rates than those responding after 30 minutes. And we didn't run any studies ourselves. This is just what we had found. But they were getting about 200 leads monthly during peak season with a 20% conversion rate. So 40 leases monthly. And if improving response time could increase the conversion to 25%, which is pretty conservative based on industry benchmarks, that would be 50 leases every single month or 10 additional leases as well. So if we place a $1,400 average monthly rent with their 10% management fee, each lease is generating $140 monthly. So at $1,400 average monthly rent with their 10% management fee, each lease generates $140 monthly recurring revenue. 10 additional leases, this would be generating an additional $1,400 monthly, or about coming up to close to $20,000. It was actually $16,800 annually. Second, this was tenant retention. So their annual turnover rate was about 35%, which is pretty typical for industry, nothing crazy there. But we found that better communication and faster maintenance response times typically improves the retention by about 8 to 12%. So with 400 units and 35% turnover, they had 140 turnovers annually. If they could reduce that to about 30%, which is pretty realistic with better systems, better automations, that is 20 fewer turnovers. And each turnover, it cost them about 21 days of vacancy on average, plus cleaning and make ready costs. So 21 days at $47 daily rent is $987 per turnover. We times this by 20 turnovers, that's $19,740. So $20K if we round up, just in reduced vacancy costs annually. Plus, each retained tenant continues generating that $140 monthly management fee. So if we take 20 retained tenants times $140 times 12 months, obviously just a year, this is coming out to be $33,600 in additional annual revenue. So the tenant retention improvement generates, let's say $20,000, it's actually $19,740 plus $33,600. This comes out to be $53,340 annually. And third, this was operational efficiency gains. So by reducing the time spent on routine tasks that they had, their existing team could handle more units without any proportional staff increases. And we estimated that they could handle about 7.5% more units. This is about 30 additional units with the same core team generating $140 monthly each, or $4,200 additional monthly revenue, or $50,400 annually. So the total revenue impact, look at this, it's $16,800 plus $53,340 plus $50,400. So for just adding all of this up, this was $120,540 annually. So pretty substantial, right? All right, here is how AI is actually creating the value. So a key question within this is like, how do we know our AI solutions will actually deliver these savings and these benefits? And this is just coming down to understanding the specific mechanisms of how AI actually creates value. So for lead management, the value comes from our three main sources. So first is speed. So pretty much just our system responds to leads instantaneously versus their current 3 to 4 hours. And we'll put about like 30 seconds as opposed to like instantly for the systems to run. But we do, if we're delivering something of the sort, like a chatbot or whatever it may be at the time, we are telling it to respond instantly most of the time. So give the back end about 30 seconds. That's where we come to that number from. But the industry data, it just consistently shows that companies responding within 1 minute, they have a 391% higher conversion rate than those responding after 30 minutes. And even within the first 5 minutes, the conversion rates are 9 times higher. So, I mean, like, none of this is theoretical. I mean, we can point to dozens of different studies proving this correlation. Second, this is consistency. So every lead, they get the same high quality response with personalized information about the available properties, their pricing, and the next steps. So currently, the response quality, it depends on which agent just gets the lead and how busy they actually are. And on the other side of this, the AI is just ensuring that every prospect is getting very optimal treatment and doing everything that they are asking. Obviously, we limit the scope, but you get the point. Third is the volume capacity. So the system, it is going to handle unlimited leads simultaneously with instant responses. So during peak periods when they get 15 plus leads per hour, their agents, I mean, they get overwhelmed, and the response times, it of course just stretches beyond what it would normally be. Whereas our AI system, it maintains instant response just regardless of the volume. So it can handle pretty much unlimited concurrent messages, even calls. For tenant communication, the savings come from automation of routine inquiries, where we were analyzing their email history, and we actually found that 78% of tenant questions, they fell into 12 categories with standard answers. So it was rent payment procedures, maintenance request process, lease renewal questions, policy clarifications, where the AI agent, it was able to instantly respond to these routine questions with personalized and accurate answers. We were leveraging a knowledge base trained on their company's information, like FAQs, essentially just the brain of everything. So the AI, it was able to instantly respond to these questions with personalized, accurate answers, escalating any complex issues to the human property managers. So anything, more pressing. Now, instead of the property manager spending about 15 hours every single week, just each answering the same questions repeatedly, they spend about 3 hours weekly, just each handling only the issues requiring human judgment or some personalization, if you will. Now, for maintenance coordination, the value comes from process optimization. So currently, Tommy, I believe was the name we were using. Tommy manually calls 2 to 3 vendors for each request to just check the availability and the pricing, where our system, it was maintaining real-time vendor databases with availability, specialties, and the performance ratings, and automatically selecting the best vendor just based on work type and the location. And it was able to coordinate scheduling through their integrated calendar system from there as well. Now, a 45-minute manual coordination process, this is going to become a 5-minute automated process just because the system, the AI agent, it has instant access to all the vendor information, and it can simultaneously be able to check the availability across multiple different vendors. And the important thing is that we're not just making things marginally faster or substantially faster. We're eliminating entire categories of very manual work that humans shouldn't even be doing in the first place. Now, really quick, before we get into the next section about the technical feasibility and that piece, I just wanted to mention that if you are a business owner looking to transform your business with AI to ultimately increase your bottom line and save your team hours every single week and transform your business and actually grow and get an edge over your competitors, then you can click on the link in the description to schedule a call with our team. It's completely free, where you can just learn more. We've worked with more than 30 different companies now, either driving significant leverage for them or just increasing their revenue and allowing them to scale efficiently. So if you're at all interested to grow your company, then again, link will be down below. We would love to discuss, but in any case, let's get back to the next section, which is going to be phase 4 of what we call our exploration phase, as I touched on briefly. And this is just where we are determining if we can actually build what we have identified as high return on investment opportunities. All in all, this typically is about a 1 to 3 week study where we are just assessing the technical feasibility, some of the data access, like the plumbing of all that, and the integration requirements. So ultimately, is it possible for us to do this? So for these guys in particular, we had identified lead management automation as the highest ROI opportunity, as it usually is across most of the companies that we work with. It's pretty much always pointing to sales when we start off with something to do with sales at least. But of course, we just needed to validate whether we could actually integrate with all of their data sources. So this exploration phase, we call it typically Expo for short. This phase involves several key activities. So first, we just go through API and data access assessment, where we just need to understand what data that we can actually access from each system and how. So we need to make sure we're getting read and often post access, being able to grab information from the system and also update and post different things in the systems. Not going to get too technical, but so beyond this, for these guys, we discovered that Zillow, they had no official API for property management companies. So we needed to do some custom scraping. So apartments.com, they required portal access only. So there was no webhooks or APIs available. So this made things pretty difficult. Second, we do integration complexity analysis, where their main property management system, AppFolio, it had a lot of API limitations where we could read most data, but writing back, it was pretty restricted. So there was some critical operations like lease creation that had to be handled through browser automation as well, instead of just clean API calls like we would normally hope for. Third, we were assessing data quality and the structure. So about 25% of their historical leads, they were missing really critical information. So it was phone numbers, they weren't standardized, addresses, they were inconsistent across different sources, property preferences, they were just missing entirely. Fourth, we evaluated the compliance and the security requirements. So real estate, they had strict fair housing laws that affect how we can actually qualify these leads. So we need 7-year data retention for all of these interactions and all these state-specific communication requirements and just complete audit trails for these regulatory compliances. So this Expo phase, this also included building proof of concept, a PC stage prototype for the most complex integrations. So for the Zillow scraping system, we had built a test system that could just parse their email formats and extract lead information. So it's usually just a small sliver, small slice of the full build out. And for AppFolio, we tested both API and browser automation approaches to determine the most reliable method. We also validate our ROI assumptions with small scale testing. So instead of just assuming improved response time would increase the conversion, we actually ran a 2-week test where we just manually responded to leads within 5 minutes and we tracked the conversion differences. And what this was just doing was just giving us the confidence in our projected improvements. And the outcome of this exploration, it really determines whether we actually are able to proceed with implementation. Obviously, we always want to proceed, at least if the client is a decent company to work with and not very difficult. But we can only move forward if we can reliably automate at least 80% of these identified workflows. If integration complexity doesn't exceed our technical capabilities, or if data quality issues can be resolved within a reasonable cost, and if the compliance requirements can actually be met. So for these guys, we luckily were able to validate that we could actually automate about 85% of their lead management workflows. The integrations, they were complex, but they were manageable. Data cleaning, this was going to be pretty straightforward, nothing too crazy for us. And the compliance requirements were very well understood. So this exploration phase, we charge $7,500, which gets credited towards the implementation if we actually proceed. But this is going to prevent any scope creep, eliminate technical surprises during the development, and just ensure that we can actually deliver exactly what we've been promising. Okay, now this is where we're going to be getting into the actual return on investment calculation. So what you guys have probably clicked on this video for. And this is just where we are going to put together all of our cost analysis and revenue impact assessments into this concrete projection, just using our systematic framework that we've compiled. So here is how we structure the calculation. So just first, we are calculating the total current state costs. So the direct labor cost of $133,640 plus hidden costs of $26,728. This comes out to be about $160,368 annually. And then we are calculating the revenue opportunities. So the lead conversion improvement of $16,800, the tenant retention improvement of $53,340, and operational efficiency gains of $50,400, totaling $120,540 annually. So the total potential annual value, $160,368 plus $120,540. This comes out to $280,908. But here is the critical part. So we are factoring in the implementation timeline and the ramp up period. So the full benefits, they aren't going to be realized immediately, and we need to account for the change management challenges that every business transformation so often faces. So month 1 through 3, there's a 0% benefit. So this is including the development and the deployment phases. Months 4 through 6, this was a 45% benefit with initial adoption with some sort of learning curve. Months 7 through 9, we wrote out a 75% benefit with system optimization and staff adaptation. In months 10 through 12, we put this to about 90% benefit, where this is including approaching full optimization. So this is just giving us an average first year benefit realization of about 60%. So the first year realized benefits, we can look at $280,908 times 60%. That's $168,545. The implementation investment, so $45,000 development plus the $36,000 in operating costs and support. This is an $81,000 first year total investment. Now the most likely ROI calculation, so $168,545 in benefits minus the $81,000 investment. This equals $87,545 net benefit divided by the $81K investment. That's 108% return on investment. So with this, their payback period, $81K divided by 168,545, you divide that by 12. This is coming out to be 5.8 months. But we actually present a very conservative projection to clients just to manage expectations. So if we are using the 50% benefit realization, this is going to give us 140,454 in benefits minus the 81K investment. And this is equaling out to, we can call it 60K, but it was actually $59,454 in net benefit, equating to 73% conservative return on investment with 6.9 month payback. So the multi-year projections, we actually assumed that the technology costs decrease about 12% annually, while the benefits compound through system learning and expanding the automation coverage. Year 2, the benefits increased to $187,489. So the costs, they are actually dropping to $71,280. And this is cumulative net benefit of $175,744, with really coming out to be 117% cumulative return on investment. Year 3, the benefits, these would increase to $208,783. The costs, they were dropping to $62,726, where the cumulative benefit with this, or the cumulative net benefit of this, is $321,811. This comes out to be 197% cumulative return on investment. So we actually model 3 different scenarios. So we have the conservative case. This conservative case, a 50% benefit realization with a 73% first year return on investment. Now the most likely case, again, this was 60% realization. This comes out to be 108% return on investment. And the optimistic case, obviously what we always try to achieve, and beyond that, with a 75% realization, 139% return on investment. So our decision criteria require minimum 100% return on investment within 18 months, maximum 8-month payback period, and a clear path to operational independence. For this project, all these criteria were met. And beyond that, we do not just calculate the return on investment and just hope for the best. It can't just all be theoretical. So phase 6, this is just about validation. Like, how do we actually measure whether we are delivering what we're actually promising. And this is where we establish clear success metrics right up front. So for these guys, we define specific KPIs. Now, the lead response time had to average under 30 seconds, with 95% of leads getting responses within 2 minutes. The lead to lease conversion, this has to improve from 20% to at least 25% within 90 days. Tenant communication time has to reduce by at least 60% within 60 days. Maintenance coordination time, this had to reduce by at least 50% within 90 days. We also had set up our go or no-go decision framework. We only are going to be moving forward with implementations if the first year ROI is exceeding 100% and the payback period is under 8 months, and we can reliably automate at least 80% of the target workflows. And of course, just success can be measured clearly. Now, for this particular project, all criteria were actually met. 108% projected return on investment with a 5.8 month payback period. We could automate about 85% of their target workflows, and all success metrics were clearly measurable. Beyond this, we established validation procedures with specific measurement methods. So the lead response time tracked through timestamp analysis of all incoming leads versus the first response. The conversion rate measured by monthly lead to lease ratios with statistical significance testing. The labor time savings, this validated through before and after time tracking studies. The revenue impact, this measured through direct financial reporting. We also had actually built in risk mitigation strategies. So if the lead conversion improvement, if it was falling short, we had some sort of backup optimization strategy. And if technical integration fails, then we have some alternative approaches to use as well. If staff adoption is slower than expected, we have enhanced training protocols. And if compliance issues were arising, then we have legal review processes. So what had actually happened? Well, 8 months post-implementation, let me just give you the real numbers of what they came out to be and how they actually compared to our projections. So the lead response time, this averaged 18 seconds with 97% of leads getting responses within 30 seconds. And this exceeded our 30-second target and representing a massive improvement from the previous 3 to 4 hours. The lead to lease conversion, this improved from 20% to 24%. And this was actually better than our conservative 25% target, but within expected variance. So this meant that they were converting about 8 additional leases monthly instead of the 10 that we had actually projected. And we were generating $13,440 annually in recurring revenue. And we take $140 times the 8 leases times the 12 months. So all of this, generating $13,440 instead of $16,800. So still a significant improvement, just slightly under projection. So the tenant communication time, this had reduced by 68%, where the property managers, they went from 15 hours weekly each to about 4.8 hours weekly each. So this also had exceeded our 60% target and saved approximately, I'll call it 30 hours. It was 30.6 hours weekly across all 3 managers. And this was worth about 42 grand, all annually at $28 per hour. The maintenance coordination time, this reduced by 58%. So, what was it? Tommy, we were calling him. So Tommy, he went from 12 hours weekly to about 5 hours per week. So this also exceeded our 50% target. And this saved about 7 hours weekly, worth about $12,740 annually. The retention improvements, this showed early positive indicators for us actually, where their quarterly satisfaction scores improved from 3.4 to 4 out of 5. And they had 8% fewer move out notices in the second half of the year. And we estimated that this delivered about $28,500 in retention value. So this also was pretty conservative given the 8-month timeframe. The labor cost savings delivered, this was $42,840 plus $12,740 plus all of the other improvements. So approximately $68K annually versus the $96,000 that we had projected. So our 60% realization of $160K in costs. Now, almost done presenting all of this, but the total first year value actually delivered, it was $68K in labor cost savings, plus $13K in additional revenue, plus another $18K in retention and efficiency improvements. This equated to, I'm going to round up to $100K against an $81K total investment. So that is actually a 123% actual return on investment versus our 73% conservative projection. So this definitely exceeded our conservative estimates by 68% while significantly surpassing our conservative scenario and approaching our most likely 108% projection. So the results, needless to say, they did exceed our conservative projections just because staff adoption, it was way faster than we had expected in the latter months. And the AI actually handled these edge cases way better than our testing had indicated. But of course, like that's kind of the name of the game with AI. Kind of have to be, or I mean, we try to be a bit optimistic, but anyways, like the retention improvements materialized more quickly as well than all of our conservative timelines actually had assumed for. So, I mean, we tried to account for as much as we can, but can only get so far with that. Now, most importantly, the payback period was 9.7 months versus our 6.9 month conservative projection. So still representing strong value delivery that actually significantly exceeded conservative expectations. Now, look, calculating the return on investment for these AI solutions, whatever you're building out or somebody's building out, it's not just about crunching the numbers. It's more so about, just like understanding the business impact at some sort of fundamental level. And the companies that are getting massive returns from AI investments, they aren't buying the coolest technology, as you might guess. They're buying these solutions to expensive, well-defined business projections. So this like discovery to return on investment framework, it's really what separates these successful AI implementations from expensive experiments. So just start with comprehensive process mapping and qualify the current state costs, all including hidden inefficiencies, identify these revenue impact opportunities beyond just cost savings, and validate the technical feasibility before the major investment. And always measure the results with some sort of like clear success metrics. And when you can actually demonstrate a conservative like 73% projected return on investment with a 6.9 month payback period, all using conservative assumptions, then selling an 81K AI implementation, it becomes a very straightforward business decision for the client. And when the actual results come in at 123% ROI, exceeding your conservative projections by 68%, you'll be building massive credibility and trust while you're proving your systematic approach consistently is going to be delivering value. So the big thing is that this methodology, this approach, it differentiates like the premium AI implementations from any commodity automation. And when you can show like systematic business impact measurement backed by detailed cost analysis and conservative projections like that you are regularly exceeding, then clients like understand that they are investing in proven business transformations with a track record of. And I think that is where this space in a whole gets a pretty bad rep just because, everyone thinks it's so experimental. And I mean, like, take that with a grain of salt. It's a lot of the stuff definitely is experimental, but like proving this stuff, I mean, it's just like any other consulting strategy, just calling it and throwing in the trendy word AI nowadays, or AI agents for that matter. But in any case, as I mentioned earlier, if you are a business owner and you're looking for us to come in, help consult and help actually, drive hopefully significant growth for your company, then just book in a call with us down below. At least see if it is worth it. See what's out there at the very least. And we'll be able to walk you through our process even a little bit further if need be. But with that being said, if this framework was valuable, drop in the comments. Let me know like if you guys would like to see more about this process. If you would like to for me to break it down a little bit further, showing off like I'm happy to give away some of the systems that we actually use, but I just want to make sure it's going to be resonant with all of you guys. But in any case, thank you guys. If you have stuck around this long, please like, subscribe, drop a comment, and I'll see you guys in the next video.